Welcome back to Metropole TV, the first 24-hour news business channel here in East Africa. This is The Smart Investor. My name is Ali Khan Sacho, and we've got some great guests here in the studio with us. On my right, returnee.
Thank you very much.
Alexander George Owino, consultant, financial sector specialist. Good to have you back, Alexander.
Thank you very much.
And Michael Ikiara. Michael is an advocate and tax consultant at Rodl and Partner Limited. 7 years experience as a tax consultant. Let's dive into this thing, right? I mean, yesterday, obviously big, high-level event day, the drama of the briefcase and the journey to Parliament. Then we had other drama there as well because people didn't think he was going to be able to make a speech. What are your takeaways? My initial takeaway was he was trying to play a responsible, kind of more conservative type approach. That's when I was listening to the press conference afterwards, that's the message I kept hearing. What do you think, Michael, of this budget?
I think, to begin with, I think it's an ambitious budget. I think the total amount of 3 trillion is quite a large amount.
Yes.
There's the division of the 2.2 trillion for the tax revenue which they hope to collect for the 2019 and 20 financial year. That's also going to be quite difficult to reach. But I think what I'd say is that this year there have been some kind of, I'd say, imaginative tax measures.
Such as?
I'd say, of course, in yesterday's speech, the Cabinet Secretary pointed out that one of the main goals of the budget was to try to create an enabling environment.
Yes.
For especially micro, small and medium enterprises.
So there was quite a bit of increased liquidity, an attempt to pay bills quicker. I mean, it sounded good, but we've got to walk that talk, right?
True. Yeah. But there's some promising measures, for example, like this proposal to give a tax amnesty to SMEs which look to list on the
stock exchange.
Yeah, exactly. Especially on the growth emerging
gems.
Yeah, exactly. On gems. So that's one of the measures there which are listed is to give a tax amnesty for the prior 2 years before listing, such that all penalties and interest on principal taxes would be given an amnesty, blanket amnesty. But there are also provisos to that. You need to be listed for 5 years for you to enjoy that amnesty. There have also been some interesting things with regard to like the real estate investment trusts. They've added an income tax exemption now to the investee companies which are owned by the REITs. So previously the Income Tax Act only mentioned exempt income for the REITs itself, but not maybe some of the companies that they invest in. So I think that's a welcome move to try to.
So what I'm hearing from you is you are quite. What would you mark that, an A, B, C? In the context of where we are,
I'd give it a B+. I'd say they've tried to come up with some new measures I think the previous years, some of the tax measures that they've tried to put have not worked. They've not collected the revenue that they estimated would collect. But I feel like this year they've some smart kind of measures, also like the excise duty on betting. I think this finally might actually solve the issue in terms of the practicality of actually utilizing that tax measure on increasing the tax base.
Alexander, what do you think now? You heard that. That
yes.
was pretty good. Actually giving a B+. I had a teacher who never gave me an A. They'd always give you a B+, and that was the top grade. It used to annoy me enormously. Yes. What do you think? Yeah. Would you give it a B+?
My score, you don't want to hear it. But let me start. A lot of reviewers are looking at what was in the budget. I want to start with what was not in the budget.
Okay.
What was not in the budget. And I'll start with the minister's opening remarks. He kept saying, started by saying, I have a fiduciary responsibility. I'm the guardian of the nation's finances. I'm fulfilling my responsibility under the PFM Act.
Yes.
Now, when you hear the word guardian,
yes.
you hear the word trustee,
fiduciary.
In an investment context, you are talking of major responsibility. And the first responsibility of a trustee or a fiduciary is give an account of those assets entrusted to you, both income, assets, and liabilities. So immediately what came to my mind, which is not in the budget, what are you doing to fix your accounting system?
Accounting system.
You know the IFMIS.
IFMIS.
AKA IFMIS.
Yes.
IFMIS, we know, doesn't give him reports that you need to manage the business called government, It doesn't tell you where the assets are. It doesn't tell you what you owe, your liabilities. That's why you always have to manually calculate your pending bills, manually add them up from a drawer.
Are you serious?
That's what you've seen.
I thought we were a digital economy, Anthony. What are you talking about?
That's what I thought. So in my mind, without a normal functioning ERP system at the heart of government, you will not have a GL, you will not have a trial balance, you can't do your accounts, and certainly you can't do government-wide accounts. Press a button, tell me how much cash do I have.
In the bank.
In the bank.
Yes.
And if you can't do that, most of your cash is lying in commercial banks who are very happy to lend it back to you in T-bills. What's that definition? Does that merit a B+?
No.
So accounting, he started it. Fiduciary responsibility, guardian of the nation's finances, PFM responsibilities, administrator of the consolidated fund. It then follows every periodic 6 months, 3 months, every year, you must give an account of the assets entrusted to you and the flow of revenue and expenses through your hands. And is that happening? Are you getting audited accounts regularly 3 months after the year end? Are you getting a regular accounting of the liabilities that you owe?
So what do you? So what was okay? So let's. But are you saying that because you can't, you don't have, because it's so disorganized the way you're describing it, you can't make accurate decision making?
Yes, you cannot make accurate decisions. And I'll start by looking at what the rest of the world does. They have for that function a real ERP that works.
Yes.
Most of them are based on Oracle e-business suite. They also make sure they have a treasury management agency that is in charge of issuance and redemption of securities. It's in charge of a current account at the central bank, has only one responsibility: to glide down your cost of debt towards 3%. Cost of debt service to your revenue towards 3%. Notice we are still at 24%.
Yeah.
And if you use the control of budget's numbers, she mentions figures as high as 38%. She takes debt, interest plus redemption as a proportion of your expenditure. So 696 divided by 2.2, that's about 38%. 38% of what you spend is borrowed.
Hold that
That is
thought.
pretty bad.
Michael, what do you say to that?
I think I'd say
That's not a B+, buddy.
it's true. I think my counterpart he's got, I think, more of a handle in terms of the macroeconomic numbers and stuff like that. But when it comes to the perspective of the tax revenues, the cabinet secretary has been very clear that they need to increase the tax base limit. So from that perspective, and the bulk of the budget, the 2.2 trillion, I feel like there are some measures which they've brought in.
They're widening the tax net. You feel confident about that? I also saw some numbers saying that year on year the tax net had increased by like 1 million people. But I suppose that's the demographic dividend, right? That's the number of people coming into the tax bracket every year.
They do, but they also have they also have quite a steep target. The KRA corporate plan, the 7th corporate plan that goes from 2019 to 2021.
Don't they always get given very steep I mean, they always get double digit. And do they meet
But
them?
in terms of, but you see, previously it's been revenues, but you see now for talk about the medium term now, in terms of growing the revenue, the tax base, they want to increase it to 7 million by 2021.
Yes.
For example, in 2018, the number of people who filed their returns was only 3.2 million. So, for example, one of the measures they've introduced in this new budget read yesterday was to widen the scope of the withholding tax payment, subsidy withholding. They've really widened it to include now things like security services, catering services where it's outside the hotel premises, sales promotion, advertising, even transportation of goods, except for.
So, do you think his new taxes, his incremental adjustments, are going to help him reach the targets that he set out in the budget? Because we had people here who were saying they're going to undershoot by a huge margin, and instead of 600 million of borrowing, it's going to be in 600 billion. It's going to be 1 trillion.
Yeah, well, I can't say that he'll reach the revenue target. I tend to think that he'll be able to. The shortfall has been really increasing the previous years in terms of the deficit, missing the targets. I think for 2019 and 2019 to 2020, I think kind of be closer to reaching the target, maybe not reach it, but I think the measures that they put in place will capture a wide net of people who are previously not on the tax base.
Alexander, okay, so we understand you're saying it's like driving a car and you don't have the dials and you don't have the gearbox and
the windscreen is kind of hazy.
And you don't know where, when you're sort of looking out the window. Do you remember those old days when we had those old cars? Okay, so now let's take the discussion forward from there, okay?
Yes.
That we accept that.
Yes.
What were your other takeaways from this? Is it a realistic budget?
Yes.
Is it grounded in good sense? Is it going to is it the right budget for the time that we are in right now?
That's a very good question, Ali Khan. My view was he's the classic tax and spend finance minister.
Yes.
Meaning tax more, spend more.
He should have cut spending, is what you're telling me.
I'm coming down to what he should be doing.
Yes. Tell me what he should be doing.
Fiscal consolidation.
Yes.
And to do it right.
Which is actually what the central bank governor has been talking about.
He keeps saying
yes,
it.
Yes.
He doesn't know how to do it.
Yes.
Let me tell you how leading emerging markets do it. They actually do, the first thing is they reduce their spending.
Yes.
Then they also reduce taxes and tax rates. Reduce, I didn't say increase.
I agree with you.
Once you reduce that, then through the channel of investment, higher investments, you get a larger GDP, a larger cake, and then your tax take is higher. That's a Laffer curve.
Yes, and it always, I've seen it work. I've not seen it not work.
So if you're a tax and spend, CS, you'll always be giving KRA the higher targets. Now KRA cannot operate on higher targets indefinitely. The economy is not there to give a bigger yield. So that way you'll give KRA a lot of stress in terms of unrealistic targets. You keep spending, and then you have to keep raising revenue targets. And all the time, you're killing the goose that lays the golden egg.
Yes.
That goose is the economy.
Yes.
You have seen it, Khan. How many companies have left Kenya? Manufacturing is leaving Kenya. Most investors are saying Coca-Cola is gone to South Africa. I think their regional headquarters.
Many have gone.
So very many are saying that environment where consumers don't have enough to spend because taxes are sky high. We now have a new capital gains tax.
What do you think of that, by the way? What do you think of that?
Yes.
What's your takeaway? Because I must, 12.5%, it's still below some other countries in the community.
Yes.
But if we want to be a #1 investment destination for our own people, for our diaspora, and for foreign investors, was it the right message? Is he going to collect much money?
Yeah, I think he will, because the increase, of course, he's also put a caveat to it. The corporate organizations won't be subject to the capital gains tax. So for things where like you've acquired some other company or internal reorganization, the capital gains tax won't apply. Also, it's important to remember that our capital gains tax legislation also exempts securities listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange.
That's a good point. Because you know what happened last time, right? When they tried to put it on, the thing just crashed.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of like it's a measured move. I think that will, of course, it will lead to some increase in revenue, but I think you're smart to ring fence it, not to kind of scare away foreign investors, especially, and also to make it a bit more competitive with regard to the East African region.
Yes.
12.5 is kind of like the sweet spot.
Yes. My worry is once you get into more taxes, nice capital gains tax.
Yes.
During his budget statement, he kept threatening to tax digital commerce, e-commerce, and he says those taxes are coming.
Yes.
Kenyans, brace yourself, they're coming.
So when you say that, what does that mean? What it means if you, let's say you're a young guy, you're doing some work on the internet for which you're getting paid.
You're going through Twitter.
He's going to pay. He's going to hit you on tax.
Now, taxes on e-commerce haven't worked very well across the world.
Yes.
Especially next door, you've seen in Uganda that mess.
Yes.
And
it collapsed the demand, actually.
Yeah. The mere fact that it's visible, it's digital, I can access it quickly, doesn't mean you should tax it. Then he also kept threatening, I'm bringing on more tax in terms of excise.
Yes.
He mentioned excise was giving us only 3% of GDP. Now it's 2%. I want to increase that excise rate. So tax.
Yes.
Spend. And
tax and spend.
The problem that happens then is any debt that you have will then snowball very quickly out of your control. And you heard him saying, we steady as it goes
He
up.
gave a very,
Debt
very
is
steady,
good,
steady, we're
sustainable,
yes,
we're
solid,
fine,
we're
we
on
always
top
pay our
of things.
debts,
Yes, yes.
always pay our debts. But debt is like a snowball. You are on top of it, you can manage it well until you can't manage it.
Yes.
And then you can't predict that point. For Kenya, I estimated at 72% of GDP.
Debt to GDP. So
At that level,
you're much higher than what is being reported.
We're on about 62, 67.
Yeah.
But 72 for me is a distressed red line.
Yes.
But debt, I see it in three simple ways. And I'm using the rules that were imposed on Greece by the Troika, the
Yes.
ECB, the IMF, and the European Commission. They were told, ensure your debt service is not more than 19%. Condition number 2, run a primary budget surplus.
We haven't run that for
We're
years.
running a deficit.
Yes.
Condition number 3, ensure your debt is not increasing indefinitely. We trip those barriers of Greece on all three measures.
Do you agree with that?
I think I just wanted to
Yes.
add a point, especially on
Yes.
the issue of the digital economy.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
You mentioned
Which
about
is
that.
actually
Yes.
the fastest economy in
Yeah.
Kenya, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
if we look back at it, the compound growth, if you
Yes.
throw in mobile telephony,
Yes.
has been explosive. And
Biggest company in the region, Safaricom.
Exactly.
I sit in
the
the
only,
sector.
had we not had Safaricom,
Yeah.
the whole stock market would
Banking,
Yes.
what's driving it?
Yes.
Digital.
So what are you
So I
saying?
just wanted to add on the point you're making.
Yeah.
I think there's we need to distinguish between, of course, the kind of web taxes that you said are also gaining popularity around
Yes,
the world.
yes.
In Uganda, also in Europe.
Even America is
etc.
considering it. Even America is considering it.
But I think I've had a look at the draft finance bill which just came out, I think, today. So what they seem to be doing is try to clarify the fact that a digital marketplace would be it's a source of income which you should be subject to normal income tax or corporation tax like other sources of income. So it's more of a thing to clarify and to put it on paper that if you're running an online marketplace or something,
Yes.
you cannot rely on the fact that the income tax act or whatever does not
Apply.
explicitly mention. Yeah. So in that way, it's kind of different from let's say the Uganda one, where it was excise duty on social media use.
Right.
It's not a blanket type of
Yes.
tax like that. They're trying to kind of, by expanding the tax base, they're trying to look at where the areas of our economy which are growing and try to see how best to kind of bring them into the tax net.
In
And
the
I think
future.
exactly in the future. They may start with something small
So it's like
this.
future-proofing.
Then as they understand the industry more, you know, understand also how to tax
So
it better.
you're not as negative
Yeah.
on this attempt.
My only
as-
caution on that is simple. I've said is the tax and spend
Yes.
Yes.
are CS.
True.
And as soon as you tax something, you impose a tax, taxes are sticky.
Yes.
They stay on and they can only increase. But my worry, once you start there, you will never stop, number one. And the moment you do that, my concern is that he is now joining what I'm calling a war on taxpayers.
Yes.
To join the counterparty, the central bank,
Yeah.
can be perceived to be having a war on cash.
Yes.
War on cash.
Yes.
They
Yes.
want cash to be locked up, cash to be extinguished, they don't want cash at all. So the war on cash, I believe from a policy perspective, is inappropriate.
Yes.
And the minister
Is it a
going
war
on-
on cash or is it just a war on corruption? Because
In-
the theory is that there's all these 1,000 shilling notes under people's beds and what have you.
Yes, when you look at Europe, let's go even to the UK. The UK actually said, you will never extinguish cash completely.
Yes.
You're at the beach,
You
you want to buy a
can't.
soda.
Yeah, yeah.
Do I need to bring my laptop?
Grows
and-
4% a
you
year,
know?
cash flow,
Yes.
cash in circulation.
So war on cash largely targets the small man. The really big fish you want to catch, don't deal in cash. Those are transfers. The illicit financial flows from Africa, they're not carried in bags.
No.
This is
Well, some might be.
Some might be.
Yes,
This
or
is
gold.
gold. This is transfer pricing.
Yes.
Trade misinvoicing. The way you structure yourself in terms of your headquarters. I'm in Bermuda. That is not cash. That
Yes.
is transfers.
Yes.
So a war on cash just attacks the common man.
So you're saying that the
Or the war on
taxpayers, there's too
taxpayers.
much pressure now.
There's
on
too
the
much
taxpayer.
war on taxpayer.
Do you think if
Yes.
he actually went out there and cut taxes, he would collect more? because people would be more willing to pay, because at the moment, when I read, people are
Yes.
not worried about paying tax. They're saying what's happening with the tax,
Yes.
right? If you look,
Yes.
it's nuanced argument. It's not,
Yes. Yes.
no one is saying I don't want to pay anything. They're all
Yes.
saying we want to pay, but we want to see,
Resolve.
right?
Yes.
Which is how it normally works.
Yes.
And when you understand the argument, that's what people are saying. So do you think there's room to reinvent this whole thing and start thinking we can do it differently or not?
I do agree with him when he says that when he teaches pastors been to tax and spend, and I think that's one of the problems that people have been talking about, that you mentioned, the fact that what are we doing with our taxes? In the previous years you'd say that I'd say he was overly taxing the people who were already in the tax net.
Yes.
Because it was the easiest source to just go for the people who you already know.
But now
pay
you're
taxes.
saying it's
But now,
widening it.
because now, people have complained. Now we've been taxed and nothing is left. I mean, companies are slowing down, things like that. I think this is where now, and right now, I think it's caught in between a rock and a hard place with trying to achieve this ambitious Big Four agenda of the government.
Which allocated a lot of money, for over $4 billion, right?
Exactly. Exactly. But I feel like right now is when he's trying to open his mind towards bring other people into the tax net and, like you say, grow the economy and like that. But I feel in the past you are right in terms of that he was overly taxing the people who already be subject to
Let
tax.
me ask you for one last final thought on this. In this way, what would be your policy prescription had you been in his seat? What would you have liked to see him do that he didn't do? And then, Michael.
I think from my perspective, I think I'd say he needs to really increase the incentives for investment in the country and in different sectors in the economy. I think there's a lot of always empty talk about we want investors to come, but actual practical policies and things that would actually invite people to our country and invest and grow the economy.
Alexander?
I think for me, same thing. Don't be a tax and spend CS. Have a long-range plan. Investment-led growth is the only way out if you want to grow your agriculture, manufacturing, investment-led growth. And higher taxes, more and more conditions, a war on taxpayers, that is not a fertile ground for investors. They're like geese, flying geese. They look at the conditions on the ground. If they're favorable, they take root. If they're not, they fly away to either your Malaysias, your Chiles, your South Africas, or even our neighbors.
You're saying we're not as attractive a destination as
so
we
we will
once
not
were.
be attractive unless the CS can pivot from this tax and spend war on taxpayers and goes towards a more welcoming, investor-friendly regime.
Let's wish for that.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure having both of you, Michael Ikiara, an advocate and tax consultant at Rodl and Partner Limited. Thank you, Michael, for coming in today. Please, you're most welcome to come again. Alexander George Owino, you're back twice. You're ubiquitous, I should call you. It's a pleasure having you on today as well.
Yeah,
and thank you for enriching our conversation. It was really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you
This
very much.
was Metropole TV. This was The Smart Investor. My name is Alikan Sachu, and I wish you all a lovely weekend. I'm sure you deserve it.